Chosen one. No evil can reach your territory. There's a distinct, heavy silence that falls right before a storm breaks. You know that feeling. The air gets thick. The sky turns a bruised, unnatural purple. And you stand there, watching the shadows stretch across your front porch, wondering if the walls you built are strong enough to hold back the wind, wondering if the chaos is finally coming for you. Have you ever felt like you are constantly bracing for a hit that hasn't landed yet? I want to hear your real story in the comments below, because this space is for honest conversations. It is an incredibly lonely thing, being the one who carries the light. You don't ask for it. You don't wake up one Tuesday morning and volunteer to be the lightning rod for everyone else's unhealed wounds. It just happens. You walk into a room and you can feel the temperature shift. You can feel the unsaid words hanging in the air, thick as cobwebs. And for a long time, you probably thought it was a curse. You thought you were just too sensitive, too porous, like a sponge soaking up the murky, stagnant water of a world that refuses to clean itself. It's exhausting. Deeply, bone-achingly exhausting. Think about the nights you spent staring at the ceiling, the soft blue glow of the moonlight bleeding through the blinds. The house is perfectly quiet, but your mind is a battlefield. You replay conversations. You analyze shifts in tone. You brace for the inevitable moment when the other shoe is going to drop. Because in your experience, the other shoe always drops. When you carry a certain kind of energy, you become a magnet, not just for good things. In fact, mostly, in the beginning, you become a magnet for chaos. People who are drowning will instinctively try to pull you under with them, not because they hate you, but because they are desperate for air. And you, with your open heart and your willing hands, you let them use your shoulders as a ladder. You let them step on you to reach the surface. Then you watch them swim away, leaving you swallowing salt water. That is a descent. That is a slow, quiet realization that the world is heavy and you are somehow expected to hold it up. It leaves a mark on you, a kind of spiritual fatigue that a good night's sleep can never quite fix. You feel it in your physical body, the tightening in your chest when the phone rings, the dull ache at the base of your neck that never seems to fully go away. Your nervous system is strung tight like the strings of an old guitar, ready to snap at the slightest rough touch. You go to social gatherings, the ones you can get out of, and you sit in the corner observing, watching the masked faces laugh at hollow jokes. You feel the heavy, unsaid resentments flowing beneath the polite conversations like a subterranean river, and you absorb it all. You are a living, breathing tuning fork, vibrating violently to frequencies no one else can even hear. Then you go home, peel off the clothes that smell like other people's energy, and you crash. You don't just sleep, you power down, like a machine that has overheated. You start building walls, thick, heavy, impenetrable walls made of stone and iron and silence. You shrink your circle. You stop sharing your dreams. Because every time you laid them out on the table in the past, someone came along and spilled their muddy coffee all over them. You learn to expect betrayal. You learn to anticipate the disappointment, wrapping it around yourself like a heavy winter coat. It's stifling, but at least it's warm. At least it's predictable. But inside that fortress you built, there's a profound, echoing isolation. You look out the window at the rest of the world living so lightly, so carelessly, and you wonder what that must feel like, to just exist, to not have to scan the perimeter for threats every time you step outside your front door. There is a specific kind of grief that comes with realizing you are different. It's a quiet mourning for the easy life you will never have. You see others playing checkers while you have been involuntarily drafted into a lifelong game of chess, where the stakes always feel like life and death. And the hardest part is that no one else can see the board. They tell you you're overreacting. They tell you it's all in your head. They throw out words like paranoid or intense or guarded. They don't see the unseen forces you are wrestling with in the dark. They don't know about the malicious intent you intercepted before it could hit your family. They don't see the silent prayers you whisper to clear a room of a heavy, suffocating presence. They just see you standing there, tired, maybe a little distant, holding a shield they didn't even know was necessary. So you carry it alone. You walk through the world like a ghost in a machine, hyper-aware of every glitch, every spark of malice, every hidden agenda. You become an expert at reading the micro-expressions on a stranger's face. You know exactly when a room is about to turn hostile before anyone else has even taken a sip of their drink. It is a brilliant survival mechanism. But survival is not living. It is just avoiding death. And living in that state of perpetual defense, it wears down your edges. It makes you cynical. You start to believe that the darkness is bigger than you. You start to believe that eventually the walls will crumble, the gates will give way, and the floodwaters of everyone else's toxicity will finally wash you away. You look at your territory, your mind, your home, your fragile peace, and it feels less like a sanctuary and more like a besieged castle. Supplies are running low. The guards are falling asleep at their posts. And you are standing alone on the parapet, staring out into the pitch-black night, waiting for the invasion. That fear is real. It is valid. It is the undeniable consequence of having a light so bright that it exposes everything hiding in the shadows. When you shine that brightly, the things that live in the dark will inevitably crawl toward you, some to find warmth, some to extinguish the flame. And for so long, you have been desperately trying to cup your hands around that flame, terrified that the next gust of wind will plunge you into total darkness, terrified that you are entirely unprotected against a world that feels so endlessly, relentlessly harsh. You begin to believe that this is just your lot in life, to be the punching bag for the universe, to be the eternal caretaker of broken things, while you yourself remain fractured and bleeding out in the snow. You wonder if there will ever be a day where you can just lay down your sword and rest. But here's the truth about the wind. The wind can howl. It can rattle the windows in their frames. It can strip the leaves from the trees and send the dust swirling wildly into the gray sky. But the wind cannot move the mountain. For years, you have been identified with the trees. You thought you were the branches, bending and snapping under the unbearable pressure of everyone else's storms. You thought you were the leaves, being torn away and scattered across the cold ground. But you are not the foliage. You are the mountain. And the mountain does not fear the storm. It simply stands. It lets the weather happen around it, knowing with absolute certainty that weather is temporary. But stone is permanent. There's a profound shift that happens when you finally realize your actual position in the natural order of things. You are not a victim of the chaos. You are the anchor in the middle of it. Think about a lighthouse standing alone on a jagged, isolated coast. The ocean does not respect the lighthouse. The waves crash against its base with unimaginable, chaotic violence. The salt water eats at the stone. The gale-force winds scream against the thick glass of the lantern room. If the lighthouse had a mind, it might feel terrified. It might feel like it is constantly under attack from a world that wants to destroy it. It might wonder why the ocean hates it so much. But the ocean doesn't hate the lighthouse. The ocean is simply acting out its nature. It is wild, untamed, and entirely unconscious. And the lighthouse? The lighthouse doesn't fight the ocean. It doesn't jump into the freezing waves and try to wrestle the water into submission. It doesn't try to reason with a hurricane or beg the storm to be gentle. It just stands there, built deep into the bedrock, and it shines. It does the one thing it was designed to do, and by doing so, it forces the darkness to break around it. This is what is happening to you. You've been looking at the crashing waves and thinking you are drowning, but you are not in the water. You are on the rock. You have always been on the rock. The evil, the malice, the heavy, toxic energy you feel from others. It is just the ocean crashing. It is loud. It is incredibly intimidating, but it cannot actually reach you. It cannot pull you under unless you voluntarily jump off the tower and into the freezing surf. There is a universal law of spiritual physics at play here. Low-frequency energy, the hatred, the envy, the deceit, the manipulation, is incredibly dense. It is heavy. It drags along the ground like thick, suffocating fog. But your energy, the quiet light you carry, the truth you hold in your entire heart, operates on a completely different frequency. It is lighter. It rises. The fog cannot touch the sun. It can obscure from the ground for a little while. Sure, it can make the day feel gray and miserable for the people walking in the mud. But the fog can never reach up into the stratosphere and extinguish the star. It is physically impossible. And it is spiritually impossible for the malice of ordinary, unconscious people to destroy the core of who you are. You are officially protected, not by some magical, invisible force field that deflects every minor inconvenience, but by the sheer, unyielding density of your own truth, by the fact that you absolutely refuse to become like them. Every time someone betrayed you, and you chose not to seek revenge, you added another block of solid granite to your tower. Every time someone misunderstood you, and you chose to walk away instead of fighting in the dirt, you reinforced your foundation. You built your sanctuary out of the very pain they tried to destroy you with. And now, you're out of their reach. They can look up at you. They can yell from the shoreline. They can throw stones that fall harmlessly back into the water long before they hit the glass. But they cannot enter your territory, because your territory is no longer their world. You have ascended, not by floating away on a cloud, but by digging your roots so deeply into the earth that nothing can ever uproot you. The shift is realizing that you do not need to brace for impact anymore. You can drop your shoulders. You can unclench your jaw. The storm will come. The storm will always come. But the storm is outside, and you are safely inside. There's a profound, quiet strength in finally accepting this. It is not a loud, victorious cheer. It doesn't feel like winning a lottery or crossing a finish line with confetti falling from the sky. It feels like exhaling a breath you've been holding for a decade. It feels like sitting down in a sturdy wooden chair at the end of a very long, very hard day of manual labor. Your muscles still ache. Your hands are still callous. The memories of the betrayals and the heavy. Sleepless nights do not just vanish into thin air. You don't suddenly become oblivious to the darkness of the world. In fact, you see it clearer than you ever have before. But it no longer owns you. You realize that the quiet you always craved was never going to come from the world outside. The world will always be noisy. The world will always be full of broken people bumping into each other in the dark, leaving bruises and pointing fingers. The quiet comes from you. It comes from the absolute, unwavering certainty that no matter what walks up to your front door, it cannot cross the threshold without your permission. You hold the keys. You have always held the keys. You can finally look at the people who hurt you, the people who drained you, and instead of feeling panic or defensive rage, you feel a distant, detached sorrow for them because they are still in the water. They are still fighting the waves, swallowing salt, desperate for a single breath of air. And you are not. You are standing by the fire, drying off. You will still have days where the gray sky makes you feel melancholy. You will still have moments where an old memory catches you completely off guard and stings the center of your chest. That is just being human. Healing is not a lobotomy. It doesn't erase the past. It just removes the venom from the bite. You learn to sit in your living room, listen to the rain hit the roof, and instead of fearing the flood, you just appreciate the rhythmic sound of the water. You make a cup of coffee. You watch the steam rise in the morning light. You feel the solid floor beneath your feet, and you recognize that you are safe. Actually, genuinely safe. The perimeter is secure, not because you're standing guard with a weapon, but because the walls are simply too high for anything malicious to climb. You have earned this quiet. You paid for it with years of confusion, hot tears, and relentless, exhausting empathy. So claim it. Sit in the stillness. Let your nervous system finally, truly power down to its natural, gentle hum. You survive the descent. You weather the storm. And the territory you stand on now is sacred ground. It is yours. And no evil can ever reach it. Putting together these stories takes hours of dedication. If this video brought you peace today, you can buy me a coffee using the Ko-Fi link in the description. Your volunteer support keeps this channel alive. Thank you for listening. Because here is what happens when you finally claim that sacred ground. The world doesn't stop turning, but your rotation within it completely changes. You start to notice a bizarre, almost beautiful phenomenon in your everyday life. You go to the same places. You interact with some of the same people. But the mechanics of those interactions have fundamentally shifted. Some will try to hand you their heavy, toxic baggage, just like they always used to. They will complain, they will gossip, they will try to drag you down into familiar mud of their own misery. And the old you would have taken that baggage, you would have carried it for them, strapped it to your own back, and let it crush your spine while they walked away feeling 50 pounds lighter. But now, they hold the baggage out to you, and you just look at it. You don't get angry. You don't yell at them. You just keep your hands in your pockets. And eventually, they have no choice but to put their own baggage back down and carry it themselves. It is incredibly quiet, this new boundary. It doesn't require an announcement. It doesn't require a dramatic exit or a long, drawn-out explanation. It is simply a change in your frequency. You become like a radio station that is finally tuned past the static and locked onto a crystal clear signal. The static is still out there. The interference is still broadcasting loudly across the dial, but you are no longer picking it up. Think about what it feels like to drive down a long, dark stretch of highway in the middle of the night. The headlights of the oncoming cars are blinding. The rain is coming down in sheets, blurring the windshield. It feels dangerous. It feels tense. That was your entire life. But stepping into your protected territory is like pulling off that highway and parking in a warm, brightly lit garage. You turn off the engine. You hear the ticking of the cooling metal. You listen to the rain drumming harmlessly against the thick roof above you. The storm is still raging out on the interstate. The danger is still very real for the people still driving. But you are parked. You are safe. You have removed yourself from the traffic entirely. This is what it means when we say no evil can reach your territory. Evil isn't always a cinematic monster hiding in the shadows. Most of the time, it is remarkably mundane. It is the insidious, draining narcissism of everyday life. It is the person who subtly undermines your success because they are terrified of their own failure. It is a family member who uses guilt as a weapon to keep you tethered to a dynamic that stopped working 20 years ago. It is a collective, low-grade anxiety of society that has forgotten how to sit still and just breathe. That mundane evil relies entirely on your participation. It needs your reaction. It feeds on your defensive energy, your arguments, your attempts to explain your heart to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. When you withdraw that participation, the evil stars. It approaches the edge of your territory, sniffs the air, and realizes there is absolutely nothing left for it to consume. So it wanders away. It goes looking for an easier target, someone who is still willing to engage in the endless, exhausting war of emotional attrition. And you are left in the quiet. At first, this quiet will feel strange. Your nervous system, so accustomed to the adrenaline rush of constant defense, might actually mistake the peace for boredom. You will catch yourself scanning the horizon, waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the hidden agenda to reveal itself. Be patient with yourself in those moments, not the polite, forced laugh you use to diffuse tension in a room, but a deep, resonant laugh that starts in your chest and surprises even you. You discover that beneath the layers of protective armor you wore for so long, you are actually incredibly light. You are a being of immense, quiet joy. You just had to get the world's heavy hands off your shoulders to realize it. There's an old saying that a ship doesn't sink from the water around it. It only sinks if the water gets inside. You have spent years diligently, exhaustingly bailing water out of your boat, terrified that every new wave was going to be the one that took you under. But you have finally finished patching the holes. The hull is sealed. The wood is strong. The ocean will continue to heave and swell. The dark water will always be there, vast and unfathomable, but it cannot get inside anymore. You can finally stand at the helm, look out at the endless horizon, and simply enjoy the voyage. You're no longer fighting for your life. You are just living it, protected, grounded, untouchable. Putting together these stories takes hours of dedication. If this video brought you peace today, you can buy me a coffee using the Ko-Fi link in the description. Your voluntary support keeps this channel alive. Thank you for listening. And there is a strange, quiet grace in realizing that your light never actually went out. Through all the years of absorbing the cold, through all the bitter winters of the soul where you were convinced you had absolutely nothing left to give, the spark remained. It just retreated deeply inward. It hid in the center of your chest, waiting patiently for you to build a hearth safe enough to hold it. Now, you have finally built that hearth. The stones are laid. The fire is drawing oxygen. And you can finally feel the warmth radiating outward, filling the empty rooms of a house you used to be afraid to live in. Think about the immense, quiet power it takes to walk through the fire of other people's unresolved trauma and come out the other side without smelling like smoke. That is your actual legacy, not the pain you endured, but the absolute, undeniable grace with which you refuse to let it turn you bitter. You will look in the mirror on a random Tuesday morning, water dripping from your face, and you will see someone you barely recognize. Someone softer, someone deeply, unshakably still. The frantic, scanning energy behind your eyes is gone, replaced by a quiet, steady gaze that knows exactly what it is worth. You no longer flinch when the floorboards creak. You no longer read catastrophic meanings into the empty spaces between words, because you have finally befriended the silence. You understand now that silence is not an absence of sound. It is a profound, living presence. It is the heavy, comforting blanket that wraps around you when you stop demanding the world be anything other than exactly what it is. Let them spin their wheels. Let them build their chaotic dramas and cast their heavy plays and desperately search for an audience to validate their noise. Your theater is closed. Your ticket is ripped, and you have walked out into the cool night air, leaving the frantic noise of the crowd far behind you. Imagine walking down a quiet street, the street lamps humming softly, casting long, peaceful shadows on the damp pavement. You breathe in. The air is crisp, and it fills your lungs with a profound realization that you do not owe the dark anything. Not your fear, not your attention, and certainly not your peace. You have staked your claim. You have surveyed your territory, and you have locked the heavy iron gates, not out of malice or anger, but out of a deep, abiding reverence for your own life. This is what ultimate victory looks like. It is not a battle won with swords and shouting and righteous fury. It is a war ended simply because you finally realize you never had to show up to the battlefield in the first place. You are here. You are safe. The ground beneath your feet is solid stone, and no evil, no shadow, no heavy wind will ever reach you again. Putting together these stories takes hours of dedication. If this video brought you peace today, you can buy me a coffee using the Ko-Fi link in the description. Your volunteer support keeps this channel alive. Thank you for listening.